Hey everybody, Kenny here. Just a little housekeeping before we get going. My Path of Exile builds are intended for casual Path of Exile players, so if you're looking for something to help you blast through pinnacle content, this isn't the place. That said, as you would have seen from the thumbnail and the title of these videos, I am theming these based on skills from the Dragon Quest franchise. Since if you've checked out my videos at all, you may be aware that I am passionate about action RPGs and JRPGs. They're my favorite genres. So blending the two was just a no-brainer for me. And in the off chance that at some point in the future my channel blows up and you're watching this when I have a high enough subscriber count that such a concern might actually be warranted, I assure you, this is not a sponsored video. Time of recording, my subscriber base is far too small for any big publisher to pay me any mind. So, not worry, this isn't some billing to promote the new Dragon Quest Monsters game or anything like that. It's just a fun idea I had for theming my content for this league. That out of the way, let's get going. This time we're going to be taking a look at my Wraith build that I was running through the Affliction League. This is just the part 1 version, so acts 1 through 5. And while I call it the Wraith build, technically this is actually themed after the Shade from the Dragon Quest franchise. I just prefer the name Wraith because, you know, big 80s kid, so it was just, you know, one of my favorite movies growing up, and since there is a Wraith enemy in Dragon Quest, I feel justified in using the name while the actual physical aspects are themed after a different enemy. So first let's see it in action, and then I'll explain how I put this guy together. Since this is the Affliction League, I might as well show the build off in the actual league specific area. First off, in terms of auras, we're running both Herald of Ice and Herald of Agony, as well as Precision. And I'm also using Ravenous to give us some extra damage and damage reduction. But I am not using the Summon Dark Effigy because this is kind of useless. I mean, it's interesting because, you know, you use up half of your life to create your little totem, but you're linked to the totem. And while the totem does take part of the damage you take double the damage that the totem takes. So if you get attacked and you have this totem down and they attack the totem, then you get pretty messed up. So I do not recommend using this, but this is a good Wildwood Ascendancy for early game, just because you don't really have to think much about what you're doing. You don't have to worry about like charms or tinctures. You know, you can just run Ravenous, and as soon as you kill an enemy, you can just eat that enemy, and you have that bonus for the rest of the area. So now that we've seen it in action, how do we put this guy together? As far as the affliction tree goes, it doesn't really matter which one you pick. Right now, I'm using the Warlock specialization, but the only reason I'm using the Warlock specialization is that I was doing the quests for that NPC to gather the lore. Personally, like for this particular build, I think that the Warden is the better choice just because the tinctures that they offer can do some interesting stuff that may work out better for however you like to play. Like this one here makes it that all damage can ignite, and you get increased damage against enemies on low life. And I have one here that all damage can shock, and when you kill an enemy, you gain mana back, which can be good for a sustain if you're not running the particular build that I am. Or this one makes it that that all damage can freeze enemies. You have increased rarity of dropped items by staying enemies, and your damage can penetrate cold resistance. That's a nice one if you're doing like cold damage as a main part of your build. There's neat stuff that can be done with the Warden, and in particular, the main reason why like the Warden is the one that I would want to use for this particular build is that during the league, I happened to get an Overflowing Chalice and a Kiara's Determination, which these two combined with the Warden talent that makes it that attacking an enemy causes the flasks next to your tincture, or the flasks that are adjacent to your tincture, to gain charges as you're attacking. Like, that just makes it that, this is an incredible combo. It's basically like, you just be running Onslaught along with a damage boost at all times, and makes it that you would be immune to freeze, chill, curse, and stun, while the Overflowing Chalice would be constantly making it that you're recharging your flask here. And obviously, like, you'd want to be running I don't remember what they're called, but the instillment or whatever that causes the flask to be used whenever they're at max charges. Yeah, but that's just an idea for, like, if I were to be using the Warden specialization and had enough points to get that particular upgrade. Skill-wise, our main form of damage is that we are using Blade Flurry. The Blade Flurry that I'm using is being supported by Withering Touch, Chance to Poison, and Added Lightning. The reason for this is simply that I'm using claws that both have lightning damage on them. So that's why, Added Lightning is nice to have in a build where you happen to be using weapons that have lightning anyway. And then, like, having the Chance to Poison as well as the Withering Touch gives us a nice form of extra chaos damage that we can be dealing over time, which is useful since we don't really get a lot of damage out of a channeling skill like Blade Flurry. Our secondary form of damage is that we are using Puncture. Now, the purpose of Puncture is just, to add the extra bleed onto enemies. And the Puncture that I'm using is being supported by Momentum, Ice Bite, and faster attacks. So just want to be able to get the damage from that going as quickly as possible. And by comboing that with Herald of Ice and Herald of Agony, we have extra sources of poison on hit, as well as giving ourselves some additional cold damage and chance to freeze. And then our precision gives us some additional crit chance and accuracy, as well as our Ice Golem that does the same. And I'm using Poacher's Mark for the additional physical damage reduction on enemies, as well as making cursed enemies take additional physical damage and give us additional life and mana back on hit. And of course, Dash just for the ability to get around a little easier. Gear-wise, we're running all evasion gear, with our chest also having some armor on it, but we're not really invested in armor too much. And our boots having some armor also, but once again, not really invested in armor. Now defensively, we can see that we only have 25% physical damage reduction. We only have a little bit of armor. And we have 50% chance to evade. We're overcapped on our cold and lightning resistances, but we still do a little better on our fire. We have 68% spell damage suppression chance, as well as 50% chance to block attack damage and 42% chance to block spell damage. And then 89% increased block recovery. So the largest part of our defenses are the fact that we are mitigating damage through sources outside of the standard evasion and armor. And instead, we're relying on spell suppress, our resistances, and block chance in order to keep us pretty tanky. In terms of life, we've got 1300 life going. And stat-wise, we're pretty much dexterity focused and have some intelligence and strength, but not as much as I'd like. The majority of this actually comes from our gear. I've got the strength belt, intelligence, amulet, and intelligence on our helmet. So I definitely want to work on boosting those as I continue to level through part 2. Like the main goal for pretty much all of my equipment was just to get as much spell suppress and block recovery, life, distances as possible. So these gloves rolled pretty well for us because they got the spell suppress, got the life, got the block recovery. Boots got my fire and lightning resistances. This ring got us some cold and all around elemental resistances. This one got us lots of cold resistance and lightning resistance and a little bit of lightning resistance. Our chest has both fire and lightning in a good amount. And then some cold and lightning resistance on our amulet. And then block recovery on our helmet. And then both of our claws happen to have rolled resistances on them, getting extra fire, cold, and lightning resistance from our claws. And then additional sustain from the fact that these claws inherently have life gain on hit. Then we took the claw mastery that gives us extra life on hit with our main claw and 25 mana on hit with our offhand claw. And this, honestly, I feel that this is like the crux of the build. It took me a while to actually go and choose to invest in this, but honestly, like it feels like you need to get this as soon as possible. Like I personally feel like if you choose to go this route, then once you're through here, just go straight for these nodes and just grab that. Because yeah, the extra ailment damage won't really be helping you much. The chance to poison really won't be helping you much. But you'll get a little bit of attack speed. So 10% attack speed out of here. And then like a really nice sustain out of the mastery. But primarily, like early on, like my focus was to get as much block chance as possible. That's why after I got this life over here, I went into this sword node and just got all of these that give us a chance to block attack damage while dual wielding or holding a shield. But in this case, we're dual wielding claws, so we want to have these for the extra block chance there. And in here, getting more block chance as well as attack speed. Then over this way for more block chance from Dervish. In here, we're grabbing the evasion and phasing stuff here. We're going up to freedom of movement for the increased evasion while phasing, movement speed while phasing, and the evasion mastery that gives us extra spell suppress while we have evasion on all of our gear. And the reason for getting freedom of movement is that we're doing a raider build, and I went into quartz infusion, which gives us a nice big bump to our spell suppress, as well as making it that we're always phasing. We can just walk through enemies. We don't really have to rely on our movement ability in order to get past groups. We can literally just walk through them. And so getting some extra defenses by giving ourselves phasing is a nice one, and it also works into the theme of the build where we're basically a ghost. But the fact that we can like walk through enemies is, you know, big one, which is also another reason why I went big into the block chance stuff, because, you know, like block chance basically negates damage, and spell suppress essentially mitigates a large amount of damage. So by investing in both block chance and spell suppress, it's kind of like you're not getting hit, like, you know, like attacks are passing through you. You know, going more into the theme of the build. And down here, I always grab a mark cluster in any build that's near one, especially if it's an attack build, just so I can go and turn off enemy regen. And in this case, since we don't have huge amount of damage going on, I also wanted to get marked for death, so that way, like, you know, enemies die faster. Then in this cluster here, we're getting even more block chance while we're dual wielding, as well as getting a good amount of increased block recovery. And then got the dual wield mastery that gives us a big boost to our chance to block attack damage if we haven't blocked recently. And then into this block cluster here for even more chance to block attack damage. And then the versatile combatant keystone, which reduces our maximum block chance to 50%, but makes it that all of our overcapped chance to block gets converted into chance to block spell damage at double the amount, which is how we're sitting at 50% and 42% on attack and spell block chance. And then I grab these two nodes here just for a little bit of extra life and to increase our armor and evasion a little bit. And my major upgrades that I'm planning on moving forward are to increase our health, which you notice that like we don't really have a lot of health, but this is actually just fine for where we are right now. You know, we really weren't taking damage while we were running around because, you know, like our defenses are doing a lot of work for us. But obviously, like, you know, there's going to be stuff that shows up later on that, you know, even like if you just get clipped by something, it's going to do a lot of damage. So, you know, focusing on getting our health up is a big thing to consider. So this cluster here, the rest of that health there, like the ranger health right there, just grabbing all of that, as well as grabbing this cluster here for defenses, since eventually we will be switching into that unique flask build, with the warden specialization. Since that, you know, we'll have onslaught going pretty much all the time, so this gives us a bonus to onslaught and makes it that while we have onslaught, we have even more defenses, as well as going into these nodes here for the extra blast charge gain and making it that our blasts have increased duration, which is important because the PRS Determination Flask has a very short duration. So by investing in increased duration, we make it that, you know, it's up for longer while we're building up our charges on it using the Wildwood specialization stuff from the Warden. You know, and you have, you know, Overflowing Chalice makes it that all flasks that aren't the Overflowing Chalice have a really big boost to their charges gained. So like any investment in charges gained in the tree comboed with the increased charges gained by other flasks during the Overflowing Chalice effect, you know, goes a long way. I mean, obviously, like, you know, like these aren't necessary for the build. It's just, you know, I happen to find these, and so I am going to use them. Oh, and if you happen to go the Primalist route, like they do have some good options as well that would work well with this build. I believe this is the best one that I found. Increased crit chance if you haven't dealt a critical strike recently, and if you've attacked recently, you and your nearby allies have increased chance to block attack damage. That is massive for us. That guarantees that we are at max attack and at our reduced cap of attack and spell block chance. The fact that you can find stuff like that is, you know, very cool. And you can see, like, you know, the weapons that I'm running, like, these aren't amazing claws. Like these are decent, but the big reason why I'm running these isn't like the amount of physical damage and elemental damage they have. It isn't the amount of crit chance or attack speed they have. It's the fact that these happen to have a good amount of resistances on both. Like, you know, I happen to have fire, cold, and lightning. You know, so you don't need to be, like, you know, running the most amazing weapons to get this to work for you. It's just a well-rounded build that should get you pretty far. So that's gonna be for this one. Hopefully you found some of these tips useful. If you did, then I appreciate all the YouTube stuff. Like, comment, subscribe, and perhaps share with a friend. And until next time, stay Victus, Fires and Numeris, and bye.